Greetings, curious acolytes of the galaxy, and welcome back to the archives. The long-awaited Ahsoka series has come at last, and we were treated to a 2-episode premiere that gives us a much-anticipated continuation of the Ghost Crew's story. In the time period that the show takes place, which is roughly 9 ABY, the New Republic is reigning supreme in the galaxy. However, just as we saw in The Mandalorian, they are being completely negligent that the still existing Imperial sympathizers are somehow interwoven through the system of the New Republic, and are still a part of its bureaucracy. Episode 2, Toil and Trouble, gave us a look into this as Ahsoka Tano and Hera uncovered a secret Imperial cell working in the Corellia shipyards. It is here where we are introduced to one of the newest adversaries, the Inquisitor known as Marrok, an Inquisitor that we can reasonably say is the last of his kind, the very final member of the Grand Inquisitorius. Though he had brief help from an HK series assassin droid, he was still able to at least hold his own against the likes of Ahsoka Tano, who in this point in the timeline has skills and power akin to a Jedi Master. So who exactly is Marrok? And more importantly, why is he the only surviving Inquisitor? And how has he survived for so long? Well, it's time for our seers to peer into the future and devise some speculations. So without further ado, let's begin. Marrok is one that we have yet to know anything about. We have not seen him or even heard of him up until this point, even in the canon comics. The Darth Vader comic run from 2017 had a lot to do with the Inquisitors, and for the first time, we actually got to see almost all of them in one place. However, in the comic, none of them present were Marrok, and neither are any of them named. However, there are a few unnamed Inquisitors that lingered in the background, but again, none of them wore the same armor displayed by this new Inquisitor, or even looked like him in body shape. New Inquisitors were being brought into the fold all the time in the beginning days of the Empire, which of course means that Marrok might have been inducted into the Inquisitorius after the initial first sweep of the galaxy post-Order 66, just like how Reva was found much later. I do believe that Marrok was one of these that was found much later in the Purge, but what increases the intrigue about this character is his apparent power level. The Inquisitors were typically ranked in terms of both power as well as accomplishments, with accomplishment and domination seeming to be the primary margins of their judgment from the two Sith Lords that ruled over them. The issue that we're having with Marrok, though, actually lies within his very name. Unlike most Inquisitors, which rarely go by their real names, but instead their rank and title, we actually call Marrok by his name and not his position within the Inquisitorius. We aren't sure how high or low he is in the Inquisitor ladder, which leaves his actual strength somewhat ambiguous. However, there are several indicators that might suggest that he is one of the stronger Inquisitors, and perhaps secondary or even comparable to the might of the Grand Inquisitor, or even potentially far more powerful than even him. We say this based off of his performance dueling Ahsoka on Corellia. Like we mentioned earlier, he did have the help of an assassin droid. However, this doesn't really mean much, since we've seen Ahsoka in the past take out 2 Inquisitors at once with barely having to use her lightsabers at all. This is when she made an embarrassment out of the 5th brother and 7th sister in Rebels. She was also able to defeat what we assume is the 6th brother in Tales of the Jedi, doing so without ever activating a lightsaber, or any weapon at all for that matter. And we can just tell by how Ahsoka carries herself here that she has grown even farther beyond what she was in the Rebels series. She's extremely powerful, one of the most powerful force wielders in the galaxy at this time. And still, Marrok held his own quite decently. At the end of the duel though, he was getting outpaced by Ahsoka's superior skill and training, but something needs to be said about his own skill in relation to the other Inquisitors, because it's no secret that the Inquisitors, by and large, are not very powerful at all. This is why when they went out amongst the galaxy to hunt Jedi, they would typically be assigned to hunt in packs or in pairs. The Inquisitors were trained by Vader to attack with an overwhelming offense in order to quickly beat down and surprise an opponent. They were also taught to ambush, flank, and divide and conquer. These simple tactics were what brought them victory in facing Padawans or lesser Jedi Knights. But Inquisitors always found trouble when they faced a Knight of significant skill, or even a Jedi Master. That is when the Grand Inquisitor, or Lord Vader himself most oftentimes, had to step in. But here is Marrok, demonstrating a level of skill and competency in battle that would put him on the level of a skilled Jedi Knight and perhaps even a Jedi Master. So, does this perhaps indicate that he had either special training or a natural talent? Not to mention, he travels alone and fights alone. Although he did rely on the droid, he did not have Shin with him in this fight. Again, when he faced Ahsoka, he may not have won or been able to gain a leg up on her, but he didn't just buckle under her power like all the other Inquisitors did. This makes us believe that perhaps Marrok was a part of a secret program and trained by Lord Vader personally. While all of the Inquisitors received instruction from Vader, it was mostly in a group setting and endless drills against one another. Vader notoriously despised the Inquisitors and felt that they just got in his way, and training them was something that Lord Vader did not often enjoy. Vader attempted to train them as quickly as possible. He was unnaturally cruel, even by Lord Vader's standards, making sure to cut off a body part or taking something away from each of the Inquisitors to teach them the true meaning of loss. If one of the Inquisitors were to get injured during training, no one was allowed to help them. They had to figure out their problem by themselves. Vader did all this so that they would draw upon the dark side of the Force and rely on ferocity in battle. This was often because many Inquisitors were former Jedi, and thus fought too defensively as a Jedi was taught. Vader was intent on breaking this habit, but he didn't go far enough into technical skill or dark side teachings. This goes into why all the Inquisitors had the lightsabers of the spinning mechanic used for compensation. But Marrok is different. He fought mostly with his single-bladed lightsaber until he needed the other one, and he didn't use the spinning mechanic until he needed a distraction. This echoes the kind of strategy that the Grand Inquisitor himself used. This would make sense since the Grand Inquisitor was a former temple guard. He was also quite skilled with the lightsaber and studied every form extensively, to the point where he could analyze which form every Jedi he faced was using. The Grand Inquisitor only ever used the spinning mechanic as an intimidation tactic more than anything else, unlike the other Inquisitors who relied on it solely. The Grand Inquisitor allowed himself to actually fight his opponent's technique to technique, in the same way that Marrok held his ground against Ahsoka as long as he reasonably could, using his own power, technique, and skill to fight off the seasoned Jedi. He really only used the spinning technique of his lightsaber to escape Ahsoka, and such training and battle wisdom can only come from a source that would teach one of the proper ways of strategy. Marrok was not trained like a normal Inquisitor. He's something else, something special. Training, we believe, came directly from hands-on Lord Vader. This is pure speculation, but it may be reasonable to assume that Marrok's unique skill and survivability came from special training from the Dark Lord itself. Besides Marrok, the last time that we saw the Inquisitors was in the year 3 BBY. We are now roughly in the year 9 ABY. That would mean that Marrok has survived 12 years past the last Inquisitors. The Inquisitors who were murdered by Darth Maul in the 8th brother, the 5th brother, and the 7th sister. Not only has Marrok held his own against one of the most highly skilled and trained individuals in the entire galaxy, trained by the Chosen One himself, but he is also the last Inquisitor. This Inquisitor in Marrok is something different. He's still very clearly aligned with the goals of a new empire and Thrawn, but seems to separate himself from the Dark Jedi. We did learn a little bit more about Marrok, such as the fact that he also was a mercenary during the era of the Empire and after it fell, just like Baylan and Shin were, until it appears he was also brought back into the fold, fighting for something that he believes in yet again. That is, his empire. He likely has a chip on his shoulder towards Ahsoka and a desire for revenge against the rebels, as it was not only the rebels that destroyed his empire, but the Ghost Crew specifically, and Ahsoka that caused the death of 4 Inquisitors, his brothers and sisters. While we don't know if Marrok has any sort of connection or care for his brothers and sisters in the Inquisitorius, we can see that he takes to his assignments with deadly vigilance and cunning tact. He's intelligent, one of the only intelligent Inquisitors. He's not arrogant and knows when to retreat once victory or a goal has been achieved. Arrogance was one of the fatal flaws of the Inquisitors, and it is clear that Marrok does not share this trait. Could he have actually been trained directly by a Sith Lord, only cast aside when someone like Luke Skywalker and his Force potential appeared in the galaxy? One thing is clear, this is no ordinary Inquisitor. He survived over a decade longer than all of the other brothers and sisters of his former order, and he held his own against somebody who should not be underestimated at all in Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka Tano is clearly on the skill level of an upper echelon member of the Jedi High Council, and Marrok survived an encounter with her. But anyway, my friends and acolytes, what are your thoughts on this mysterious Inquisitor? And did any of this cross your mind when watching the 2-part premiere? As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.